Hi, I am Lucky Ladybug, and as promised, I want to just gush for a little bit about Kuja's storyline in the Dissidia games. Now, I'll mostly be talking about the first three. I haven't actually played Opera Omnia. It's gone now, so I will never have that chance. I do know a little bit about his story in Opera Omnia, but not a whole lot, because, I don't know, information's not there. I'd probably have to watch hours and hours and hours of video to find his scenes in Opera Omnia, because it looks like nobody's actually compiled just his scenes. So I would have to, like, go all through everything to find them. So, anyway, mostly talking about the first three Dissidia games. And I hope he's going to come to duel them. But no word on that yet as far as I know, but I'm totally psyched about Seth coming, of course, because he's always my favorite. But yes, I do love Kuja, and I got interested in him because of Dissidia NT. I know a lot of people hate that game because of the crime of it not being like the first two games, and I agree that it's really sad that we didn't get a more detailed story for NT, but honestly, I love Dissidia NT. I've put in like over 1,000 hours playing it, and it is a fun game for what it is. And I just love the graphics, and I do love elements of the story. I wish it was longer, more involved, like the other two games, but still love what it is. And so I would be playing NT as Sephiroth as always, and sometimes the computer would assign me Kuja as a teammate, and other times he would be on the opposing side. And I just started hearing all these interesting theatrical comments in this very, very theatrical voice. I'm very intrigued by this guy. And eventually I got so intrigued by him that I went looking up information on him. I even bought Final Fantasy IX because of getting intrigued by him in Dissidia. And so just recently, I've done more of a deep dive of his story, and I was absolutely ecstatic when I realized that his story in the Dissidia games continues from FF9. I am absolutely convinced that the Kuja in Dissidia is post FF9. He wasn't grabbed from like the middle of the game. And there's evidence in the Dissidia games that this is true. So at the end of FF9, you know, after Kuja has done all these horrible things and he went into temporary insanity, and he comes back to himself, he finally as he's dying, he realizes that he has just done horrible things, and he even says, I don't deserve to live after all I've done. And that's really, really powerful, because like everything he did in the game was ultimately so that he would stay alive and keep his soul. And then by the end, when he has this realization of how horrible his actions have been, and he feels he doesn't even deserve to live, and his body is giving out, he dies. But so then in the Dissidia games, he's brought back to life to fight in the Wars of the Gods. And Dissidia Duodecim is chronologically the first game, even though it was the second one released. And it is really, really interesting. Now, when he first encounters Zidane in Duodecim, Zidane just automatically thinks that Kuja is on Cosmo's side. Now, you know, why in the world would Zidane think that if they've both been pulled from earlier points? Zidane is from post FF9. He thinks that Kuja is reformed, and Kuja lets him think this. He has this plan. He's actually trying to overthrow chaos, but he's a warrior of chaos, and I guess he doesn't want to tell Zidane that. He just lets Zidane think that he is a warrior of cosmos. Maybe because he figures that Zidane can't get help from others if they know that he is actually aligned with chaos. So he's trying to get these guys together, and then he's going to lead them to chaos. And then Kefka and Ultimacia and the Emperor show up, and he's exposed as a warrior of chaos. And even when that happens, he tells Zidane to take his companions and go. He's trying to help them get out of there. He doesn't want them hurt. And, you know, that shows right there that he was not trying to lead them into a trap. He was sincere. The only thing he lied about was that he doesn't work for Cosmos. He works for Chaos. But he was sincerely trying to help them. But, so then Kefka and the others blow in and expose his lie, and then of course he's forced to pretend that he was trying to lead them into a trap, because if he doesn't pretend that, then all of them are going to be killed anyway, and he's hoping that he can still help Zidane and the others, and that he can also live himself. And he tells Kefka to call off your mannequins. I will fight them. I'm more than enough. And so you fight Kuja, and then he loses. And Kefka actually outright says in the dialogue, you let them get away. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kefka is aware that Kuja was on their side. He doesn't outright say it beyond that, yelling at him for letting them get away, but I think it's pretty obvious that he's aware of this. And so, and then also, of course, there's the thing where Kuja releases Terra from Kefka's control. And of course, the thing about Kefka and, I mean, Kuja in these games, you know, he's not going to say that he's trying to help people, to be nice. He always insists that he's got some selfish reason for it. Like when he releases Terra, he's like, I'm showing Kefka how powerful I am. But Terra doesn't believe this. She thinks that he was sincerely trying to help her, and she's grateful. And so Kefka, when he realizes that Kuja was the one that released Terra from his control, boy, is he mad. I mean, you don't want to get Kefka mad. You don't want him as your enemy. So then he sets his sights on Kuja. He's going to make sure that Kuja has a problem and loses. And so eventually he does. And what I read was that Kefka is the one then that messed with Kuja's memories. I didn't see any indication of that in the games themselves. They just say that your memories were overwritten because you were defeated. It doesn't specifically say that Kefka did it. However, Kefka was certainly engineering it. He knew that would happen. And so once that happens, and then we go into Dissidia, the original Dissidia, which is the second in the chronology, we see a Kuja who is behaving more like in FF9. He's scheming and acts like he is trying to hurt people instead of helping them. He doesn't remember. That's the tragedy. So he's very, very different in the original Dissidia from how he was portrayed in Duodecim. And I would be very curious to know if it was the plan all along that they knew the story of Duodecim when they made the original Dissidia, because it was really interesting, like how Duodecim ties in all these loose ends that don't necessarily make sense. If you go straight from like the end of FF9 into the original Dissidia, Kuja's behavior does not make sense. But when you put the duodecim content in there first, you see that it does make sense. He went from FF9 to duodecim, and he's trying to help people because he is reformed. He didn't go bad again. And then you see at the end of duodecim that Kefka's been scheming against him and is plotting for him to have his memories written over so that then he'll act out like he does in the original Dissidia. And by the end of the original Dissidia, it doesn't look like he's recovered all of his memories. He seems to have recovered something. Has some very interesting scenes with Zidane in that. And he says, "I don't think I'll ever understand you." And Zidane's trying to reach out his hand to him to help him up. And he kind of just gently brushes Zidane's hand away. He doesn't slap it away or anything mean. And he does act different in that scene, more like you would expect that he might act if he does remember the end of FF9 by this point. And so it's interesting. By Dissidia NT, since the story is a little more choppy and it's not as filled in, you're not sure exactly what's going on, but everybody's supposed to remember everything now from the past times they've been there. So at this point, when Kuja shows up, he's supposed to remember everything. And they continue his storyline, and now that he remembers everything, at this point, he's gone back to being how he was in duodecim. He wants to help people. And yes, he'll still deny that he's trying to help them. He'll insist that he's doing it for selfish reasons, but people don't believe him because they can see that he's good. He's trying to help for good reasons. And he rescues Terra and Zidane from the Emperor and Sephiroth in Dissidia NT. And it's interesting that the Emperor is mad. He's yelling, calling him a traitor. Seph doesn't say anything. He doesn't seem bothered by this at all. And could be because Seph isn't happy with the situation either. He and Kuja have both been trying to find a way to break the cycles. But they haven't been working together or anything. But, you know, they've also not been fighting against each other. They've been kind of indifferent to each other. Leave each other alone. So, honestly, I don't think Seph cared what Kuja did. He didn't mind that Kuja interrupted them. He didn't care if Kuja was betraying Spiritus's side. Anyway, so then Kuja travels a little bit with Terra and Zidane, and Terra remembers in duodecim that Kuja saved her. And Kuja claims that he doesn't quite remember, but he's supposed to, so he's probably lying again. Then they get to the version of Alexandria that exists in World B, and Alexander, the summon Alexander, suddenly attacks them all, and Kuja thinks that it's the same Alexander from FF9 and that he's mad at Kuja because of things that happened in FF9, which again shows this takes place later. And Zidane insists it's not the same Alexander, that it has nothing to do with Kuja specifically. And so then they fight Alexander, and Kuja helps them again. And then he's going to leave. And Terra's hoping that they can have some time together again later and talk. And he doesn't say yes, but he also doesn't say no. And I'm not sure exactly if he has other important scenes in NT. I think those are his major ones. But what I do know about Opera Omnia is he continues in this same vein. He helps people. He doesn't try to form teams with them or anything. He prefers to work on his own, but he's always trying to help people. I found out he even saves Aerith from Kefka in Opera Omnia, which is pretty cool. So I mean, it's the same pattern. They've been very consistent with his characterization in these Dissidia games. They want to show that he really is trying to help, that he's different now. It just fits so beautifully with the end of FF9. So there's pretty much nothing that can convince me that the Dissidia games aren't the continuation of his story. And I know people don't consider Dissidia games to be main timeline canon. And maybe some people don't even want them to be, but I think for Kuja, his story is just so perfect. It just fits so well with the eventual development we get for him at the end of FF9, and then it just continues. It's just beautiful, and I love it. And you know, I am an absolute sucker for character redemption arcs. I'm always writing them myself, and then, oh my gosh, here is a canon redemption arc, and it's just what I like. It's perfect. And it's kind of funny because it's actually very similar to the one that I've written for Genesis in my FF stories, where he's always helping from the shadows. And like, here is this canon redemption arc for Kuja where he's doing the same thing. It's very, very exciting to me because it's just so perfect for him. It's perfect for what I like. And so I'm just totally in love with what those games have done with him. And I hope that if he comes in Dissidia Dualism, even though I kind of think Dualism is its own thing and not part of the other game's timeline, doesn't seem to quite fit. But I'm hoping that they will continue with his story, or start his story over. Either way, show that he's trying to help people in Dualism if they ever bring him into it. And I suppose they will eventually. Because I've been really, very confused why they haven't had any of the, you know, antagonist-coded characters until now. They're finally putting Seth in the game, so totally thrilled about that, and I'll be playing it a lot more then. Seth is like my main go-to in Dissidia, the one I almost always play as. But, so I hope that they're gonna bring Kuja into it. I keep getting their names mixed up, and it's very annoying. And this, of course, is my plush that I'm clearly not done with yet. But he will be dressed eventually, once I figure out how to make his very interesting clothes. And I have the figure here, so maybe I can use him as a guide to figure out how the heck to make those crazy clothes. But so I just wanted to make this video and gush about how perfect his story is in Dissidia, and how much I'm looking forward to seeing what else they do with him. And even if they don't do anything else, you know, we have some wonderful content in the Dissidia games already with him. And that will always be canon to me, that he is, you know, restored to life again, and he's able to try to help people like he now wants to do. Even if he denies that he's trying to help, everybody can see that he is trying to help for good reasons. He'll deny it up and down. Nobody buys it anymore. He's one of the good guys. And I am totally, thoroughly enjoying writing for him and continuing his adventures in my current story, which is called All the World's a Stage. And I'm not going to talk about that in this video because it's already way too long. But totally, he's like one of the most fun characters for me to write for. I love characters that have these kind of weird theatrical dramatic gimmicks and that kind of like to troll people. They're funny. They're just a bunch of fun to write for. And so I'm just so thrilled with the Dissidia games. And yeah, I know most people do, I think, see that it takes place after FF9, but there's a few that think it doesn't. But I am definitely of the opinion it does, because that just fits beautifully. So This is Lucky Ladybug, and thanks for watching.